What if I told you that some of the biggest truck disasters in history weren't caused by crashes, recalls, or bad drivers? They were caused by the trucks themselves. Companies spent millions developing machines they believed would dominate highways, construction sites, and freight yards, only to watch those same trucks become financial nightmares. Some failed because they arrived too late, others were too expensive, too complicated, or simply couldn't compete. And in several cases, the damage was so severe that the manufacturers never recovered. These are 10 trucks that didn't just fail, they helped destroy the companies that built them. Number 10. Mack MH Ultraliner. For decades, Mack was one of the most respected names in trucking. The company built rugged machines that earned a reputation for toughness, reliability, and long service life. But during the 1980s, the trucking industry was changing rapidly. Aerodynamics were becoming increasingly important, fuel prices remained a concern, and fleets were demanding trucks that could move freight more efficiently than ever before. Mack believed it had the answer. That answer was the MH Ultraliner. Introduced in the 1980s, the MH Ultraliner represented a major departure from Mack's traditional truck designs. Instead of the familiar conventional appearance that many drivers associated with the brand, the MH featured a much more aerodynamic profile. The truck was designed to improve fuel economy and help Mack compete against manufacturers that were already pushing streamlined highway tractors. On paper, the idea made sense. Aerodynamics could save fuel, and fuel savings meant lower operating costs for trucking companies. But there was a problem. The market didn't respond the way Mack expected. Many fleet operators simply preferred competing models. Other manufacturers had already established strong positions in the aerodynamic truck market, making it difficult for the MH Ultraliner to gain significant traction. At the same time, the truck's unusual styling divided opinions among drivers. Some appreciated the modern approach, while others preferred more traditional designs. The timing couldn't have been much worse. Mack was already facing intense competition from major truck builders across North America. The company was investing heavily in new products while simultaneously dealing with broader industry pressures. Sales of the MH never reached the levels Mack had hoped for, and the truck failed to become the game-changing success the company needed. Now, to be clear, the MH Ultraliner did not single-handedly destroy Mack. Mack still exists today, but the truck became a symbol of a difficult period in the company's history, when expensive development programs failed to generate the expected returns. During the following years, Mack underwent significant ownership changes and restructuring as it fought to remain competitive in an increasingly challenging market. What makes the MH Ultraliner fascinating is that it wasn't necessarily a terrible truck. In many ways, it was ahead of its time. The problem was that being ahead of your time doesn't guarantee success. Sometimes a company can spend years developing the right idea at exactly the wrong moment. And for Mack, the MH Ultraliner became one of the most expensive examples of that lesson. Number 9. White Road Boss. At one point, White Motor Corporation was one of America's largest truck manufacturers. Founded in the early 20th century, the company built everything from military vehicles to heavy-duty highway trucks. For decades, White competed with some of the biggest names in the industry and appeared destined to remain a major player for generations. Then came the Road Boss. Introduced during the 1970s, the White Road Boss was designed to modernize the company's lineup and strengthen its position in the highly competitive Class 8 truck market. The truck featured a contemporary cab design and was intended to appeal to long-haul fleets looking for a practical and efficient highway tractor. The Road Boss itself wasn't a complete disaster mechanically. Many drivers actually respected the truck and thousands were sold. The real problem was that the Road Boss arrived during one of the most difficult periods in trucking history. The fuel crises of the 1970s, economic uncertainty, rising production costs, and fierce competition from rivals such as Kenworth, Peterbilt, Freightliner, and International placed enormous pressure on manufacturers. White invested heavily in new products like the Road Boss, hoping they would reverse the company's declining fortunes. Instead, the company found itself struggling financially. Profit margins shrank, debt increased, and market share continued slipping. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, White Motor Corporation was facing severe financial trouble. In 1980, the company filed for bankruptcy protection. Although parts of the business survived through sales and restructuring, White Motor Corporation, as it had existed for decades, was effectively finished. The road boss wasn't solely responsible for White's collapse, but it became the truck most associated with the company's final years. It represented a massive effort to save a struggling manufacturer, and it simply wasn't enough. Imagine spending millions developing the truck that was supposed to secure your future, only to watch your company disappear shortly afterward. That's exactly what happened. And the next truck on our list belongs to a company whose downfall became one of the most shocking stories in trucking history. Number 8. Sterling Acterra. Sometimes a truck can be perfectly capable and still fail because the company behind it never finds a clear identity. That was the story of Sterling Trucks. Sterling was created in the late 1990s after Freightliner acquired the heavy truck assets of Ford. The goal seemed simple. Freightliner would use Sterling as a separate brand aimed at vocational and work truck customers while protecting its core Freightliner lineup. One of Sterling's most important products became the Acterra. The truck was designed for construction companies, utility fleets, municipalities, and various vocational applications. It was versatile, practical, and available in numerous configurations. On paper, it checked many of the boxes customers wanted. Yet Sterling struggled almost from the beginning. Many buyers weren't entirely sure what Sterling represented. Was it a premium truck? A budget truck? A Freightliner alternative? A continuation of Ford's old heavy truck business? The confusion hurt sales. Meanwhile, Freightliner already had strong products under its main brand. Maintaining an entirely separate truck division required dealerships, marketing, engineering support, and manufacturing resources. All of that cost money. Then the Great Recession arrived. Truck sales across many sectors declined dramatically, forcing manufacturers to re-evaluate their operations. In 2009, Freightliner's parent company decided to shut Sterling down entirely. The Acterra survived only as long as the brand itself. What's remarkable is that the truck wasn't known for catastrophic reliability problems. The real issue was economic viability. Sterling simply couldn't generate enough sales to justify its existence. Sometimes companies aren't destroyed by bad products. They're destroyed by products that aren't successful enough to keep the lights on. And our next truck is connected to a company that once built some of the toughest trucks in Britain before eventually disappearing forever. Number 7. ERF EC series. For generations, ERF was one of Britain's best-known truck manufacturers. Founded in 1933, the company earned a reputation for producing durable trucks tailored to the needs of operators across the United Kingdom. By the 1990s, however, the trucking industry had become increasingly globalized. Larger manufacturers possessed greater resources, larger dealer networks, and economies of scale that smaller companies struggled to match. ERF attempted to fight back with the EC series. The EC lineup featured modern styling, improved aerodynamics, and updated technology designed to keep the company competitive in a rapidly changing market. The trucks themselves received positive reviews from many operators. Drivers appreciated the comfortable cabs, while fleets valued the truck's practicality. But ERF faced a problem that no truck could solve. The company was simply too small. Developing modern trucks required enormous investments in engineering, emissions compliance, safety systems, and manufacturing. Global competitors could spread those costs across far more vehicles than ERF could. As competition intensified, profits became increasingly difficult to maintain. By 2000, ERF was sold. Eventually, the brand disappeared entirely. The EC series represented one of ERF's final major attempts to remain independent. Instead of securing the company's future, it marked the end of an era. Sometimes the truck is good, sometimes customers like it, and sometimes none of that matters when the economics of the industry change faster than a company can adapt. But the next truck belongs to a manufacturer whose troubles were far larger than competition alone. Number 6. International Transtar 470A. Few names in trucking history carry as much weight as International Harvester. For decades, the company built tractors, farm equipment, construction machinery, engines, and trucks. It was one of America's industrial giants. Then everything began to unravel. During the late 1970s and early 1980s, International Harvester faced enormous financial pressures. Rising costs, labor disputes, economic challenges, and management problems placed the company under tremendous strain. One of the flagship highway trucks during this turbulent period was the Transtar 470A. The truck was designed for long-haul operations and represented International's effort to remain competitive against increasingly sophisticated rivals. It featured a comfortable cab, modern styling, and multiple powertrain options. Unfortunately, the company behind the truck was already fighting for survival. The devastating 1979-1980 labor strike crippled production and cost the company hundreds of millions of dollars. Market share fell dramatically as customers turned to competitors who could deliver trucks without delay. Even after the strike ended, the damage was immense. International Harvester eventually sold off major portions of its business, including agricultural divisions that had once defined the company. The trucking division survived under a new corporate structure and eventually became Navistar. The Transtar wasn't responsible for the collapse, but it became closely associated with one of the darkest periods in the company's history. It serves as a reminder that even excellent products cannot save a manufacturer facing deeper financial and organizational crises. And now we're entering the top 5, where the stakes become even higher. Number 5. Foden Alpha. For much of the 20th century, Foden was one of the most respected truck manufacturers in Britain. Founded in the 1850s, the company built steam wagons before transitioning into diesel-powered trucks. By the time the modern trucking industry emerged, Foden had developed a loyal following among operators who appreciated the brand's durability and engineering quality. In the late 1990s, Foden introduced the Alpha series. The truck was intended to modernize the company's image and help it compete in an increasingly crowded European market. The Alpha featured improved aerodynamics, updated cabs, and modern drivetrains. On the surface, it looked like exactly the truck Foden needed. The problem was that the company was already fighting an uphill battle. Foden had been acquired years earlier by PACCAR, the parent company of Kenworth and Peterbilt. PACCAR also owned DAF, a manufacturer that already had a strong position throughout Europe. As time passed, the overlap between DAF and Foden became increasingly difficult to justify. The Alpha was a capable truck, but it struggled to stand out against competitors that had larger dealer networks and stronger brand recognition across Europe. Many operators simply chose DF models instead. Maintaining a separate brand required additional investment, marketing, and support infrastructure. Eventually, PACCAR decided the numbers no longer made sense. In 2006, production of Foden trucks ended. A company whose history stretched back more than 150 years disappeared from the truck market. The Alpha wasn't a bad truck. In fact, many drivers considered it one of the best Fodens ever built. But it became the final chapter in the story of a legendary manufacturer. The truck that was supposed to secure the future instead became the company's farewell. Number 4. Ford Cargo, North American Heavy Truck Program. Most people know Ford for cars, SUVs, and pickup trucks. What many don't realize is that Ford once competed aggressively in the heavy-duty truck market as well. During the 1980s, Ford invested heavily in commercial truck development. One of the most important products to emerge from those efforts was the Cargo. Originally developed in Europe, the Cargo was praised for its modern cab design and driver-friendly layout. It won awards and achieved success in several international markets. Ford hoped the truck could strengthen its commercial vehicle business and help the company compete against established heavy truck manufacturers. But the North American market proved extremely difficult. Heavy-duty trucking required specialized dealer networks, extensive service support, and strong relationships with fleet operators. Companies like Freightliner, Kenworth, Peterbilt, Mack, and International already dominated the industry. Despite the Cargo's strengths, Ford struggled to gain the market share it wanted. The commercial truck division required substantial investment, while returns remained disappointing. Eventually, Ford decided to leave the North American heavy truck market altogether. In 1997, Ford sold its heavy truck business to Freightliner. That decision eventually led to the creation of Sterling trucks. The cargo itself wasn't solely responsible for Ford's withdrawal, but it symbolized the company's inability to achieve the success it wanted in heavy-duty trucking. After decades of competing in the sector, Ford concluded that its resources could be better spent elsewhere. For a company as large as Ford, exiting a market isn't exactly destruction, but for employees, dealers, and customers who depended on Ford's heavy truck business, it marked the end of an era. And now we arrive at the top 3. Number 3. Ward LaFrance. Heavy trucks. There was a time when Ward LaFrance was one of the most recognizable names in specialized heavy vehicles. The company built military trucks, emergency vehicles, and heavy-duty commercial equipment that earned a reputation for strength and reliability. During World War II, Ward LaFrance became famous for producing military wreckers and support vehicles. The company appeared poised for long-term success, but the post-war years brought challenges. As larger manufacturers expanded their operations, competition intensified. Building specialized trucks required significant resources, and Ward LaFrance struggled to keep pace with larger rivals that could manufacture vehicles more efficiently. The company continued producing trucks and fire apparatus, but financial difficulties mounted over time. By the 1970s, the situation had become increasingly serious. Costs rose, competition grew stronger, and profitability became harder to achieve. Ward LaFrance eventually entered bankruptcy and ceased truck production. The trucks themselves were often respected by operators. Their downfall wasn't caused by poor engineering. Instead, the company became trapped between rising costs and increasingly powerful competitors. What makes the story remarkable is that Ward LaFrance survived world wars, economic crises, and decades of industrial change, only to be overwhelmed by the realities of a modern trucking market. Their trucks remained tough. The company behind them could not. And now we're down to the final 2. Number 2. Marmon Conventional Trucks. Marmon was never the largest truck manufacturer in America, but among owner-operators, it earned an almost legendary reputation. Founded by the Marmon family, the company focused on building premium heavy-duty trucks. These weren't mass-market vehicles, they were often customized machines designed for buyers who wanted something special. Marmon trucks were known for their craftsmanship, attention to detail, and high-quality construction. Many drivers considered them among the finest conventional trucks ever built. So how could a company making some of the most respected trucks in the industry end up disappearing? The answer was simple: scale. Building premium trucks is expensive. Building them in relatively small numbers is even more expensive. As the trucking industry consolidated during the 1980s and 1990s, larger manufacturers gained enormous advantages. They could negotiate better supplier contracts, spread development costs across larger production volumes, and invest more heavily in research and technology. Marmon struggled to compete. The company continued producing impressive trucks, but maintaining profitability became increasingly difficult. Eventually, production ended, and the brand faded into history. What makes Marmon's story so tragic is that the trucks themselves were admired. They weren't failures from an engineering standpoint. They simply existed in a business environment that increasingly favored larger manufacturers. Sometimes being the best isn't enough. Sometimes survival depends on being big enough. And now we come to number 1, the truck most closely associated with one of the most dramatic corporate collapses in trucking history. Number 1. GMC Astro 95. If there is one truck on this list that perfectly symbolizes a company's retreat from an entire industry, it is the GMC Astro 95. Introduced in the late 1960s, the Astro 95 was GMC's flagship cabover truck. At the time, cabover designs were extremely popular because length regulations allowed operators to maximize trailer space while keeping overall vehicle length within legal limits. The Astro looked futuristic compared to many competitors. Its large windshield, distinctive shape, and elevated driving position made it one of the most recognizable trucks on American highways. For years, the truck performed reasonably well, but by the 1970s and 1980s, the trucking industry was changing. Length regulations evolved, making conventional trucks more attractive. Driver comfort became increasingly important, and many operators preferred conventional designs over cabovers for long-haul work. At the same time, GMC's heavy truck division faced intense competition. Manufacturers such as Freightliner, Kenworth, Peterbilt, Mack, and International continued strengthening their positions in the market. GMC found it increasingly difficult to justify the investments required to remain competitive. Sales declined. Development costs rose. Profitability suffered. In 1987, General Motors made a major decision. The company sold its heavy truck business to Volvo, creating what eventually became Volvo GM Heavy Truck Corporation. GMC effectively exited the heavy-duty truck market. The Astro 95 wasn't solely responsible for that decision, but it became the most visible symbol of GM's failure to maintain a strong position in heavy trucking. A truck that once represented the future ultimately became associated with the end of an entire division. Think about that for a moment. General Motors was one of the largest industrial corporations on Earth. Yet even a company of that size decided the heavy truck business was no longer worth fighting for. And that's what makes every truck on this list so fascinating. None of them exploded. None of them instantly bankrupted their manufacturers. Instead, they became symbols of something far more powerful. What happens when changing markets, rising costs, fierce competition, and difficult business decisions collide? Some were good trucks. Some were average trucks. A few were genuinely innovative, but all of them share one thing in common. The companies that built them either disappeared, abandoned the market, or underwent dramatic transformations shortly afterward. And in the trucking industry, that may be the most expensive failure of all. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments which American truck you think was the most revolutionary. We would love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, keep those wheels turning.